Okay, welcome to the rendering element of this video. This sort of one of the final pieces, so video 19, I believe. So what we've got here is we have got the finished animation. So if I play this, you'll see the ship is coming up. It's coming off its pedestal, and then it slowly takes off, and it essentially does that. So this is what it looks like in Maya. So I'll just maximize that screen and show you again. This is what it looks like in Maya. Basically, it's running at a reasonable pace on this computer, but if you play blast this, let's just leave it as an AVI, 100% run window and play blast. This will give you an idea of what it's going to look like running at real time. So you check your animation out. It's almost there. It's a few more tweaks and stuff, but I wanted to get this rendered out to show you. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So what PlayBlast does is essentially it basically renders out what you've got in the screen. What your props do is come into what you view, press none and show polygons, like so, and then basically PlayBlast that from that particular situation. You can save PlayBlast out as a quick test and sort of edit things together. But yeah, this just gives you a rough idea of what's going on. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is rendering and how to get this from this into a finished animation. So let me show you the finished animation. So if I open up my finished animation, here we go. So I've rendered this and put it together, so I'll just maximize it. You can see some of the lighting effects. It's quite a low quality render, but you can see some of the materials are showing up better, the lights are working better, these kind of ambient elements there. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for today, something along those lines. Okay, so if I just put everything back on there, see what you can see. You can see we've got different lights in here. So if I show none and show lights, and then just take it away from the camera. So let's go to perspective view. And then show none, show lights. Okay, so we can see here we've got these lights here, which are let's look in here. The area lights around the actual plinth. There's a spotlight, more area lights around this object. That's if you look at this, they're actually linked to the ship. You can see the ship's moving. So I've actually linked some lights that are coming off the lights on the ship, and various different elements in here. So what we've got as well, let me come back to the camera view, show all, is we have, I want to show you, talk about Arnold really. So within Maya, if you come to the renderer, we're on viewport 2.0, but we've got this renderer called Arnold. So if I open up the render settings here, we've been working with Arnold anyway, so Arnold materials, and it's important that you work with those. But basically what we need to do is set this up to go out and render at a certain amount of frames. So if we just type in 1 there, so start at frame 1. This animation is 258 frames long. Like in there, that's the way it is. This frame padding should be on 4, but that's important. Make sure it's on 4. Name it something. What we want to do is we're going to render out a series of TIFF images. So if you're looking here, this is the images that I've got. So these are all the rendered images. You render out as single images, and then you composite them together in a separate software. So I've used Adobe Media Encoder to do that. But you can take it into After Effects or Nuke or whatever, and you can render out different elements to play with it a bit more. With a bit more depth, but what we're going to do is we're going to render a basic render out. So these are the settings really. So name it, TIFF sequence, leave everything on standard. This is important. I think the default is single frame. Put it on the name hash thing and then extension, because what we want to do is we want to make it as a name and then an extension, a number. So if you look at the actual numbers in here. So if you look, flight _ 1 point, it gives you the 0060. A Media Encoder needs this number to be able to load them in sequence. So that's quite important. It's also quite important, if we go back down here, make sure it's on the actual camera. I've rendered it out quite low quality to start off with, so 540. What I really should do for a final render is 1080, or even possibly go even higher than that. This is basic HD, and this is decent HD, so 1080. So if I go for 1080, you can see here it goes 1920 1080, but it takes about 30 seconds per frame to render out, and there's 258 frames, so it might be a good idea to render out as a lower quality, a few frames to start off with. Excuse me, so you can see what's going on. Everything else leaves as normal. Right, this is important. So I've, again, because of the amount of time that it's taken to render this out, I've really taken these things down. So there's things like the glass material in here, and there's no. So for example, we want the elements in here, the volumetric stuff we need because we've got the volume lighting. I've taken down the specular, and because I think that was at 3 on the default. But basically, what you do here is if you understand what these different elements are. So ambient occlusion, diffuse. Specular, transmission. So transmission is the glass when it goes through the see-through elements. But what this basically means is this is the quality of the render. So what I've spent a bit of time on this render doing is rendering out single frames with these different settings, taking these things up and down. So this is something called subsurface scattering. We're not using any of that. That's what you use for like skin materials. So I can take that to 0. But this increases the efficiency of the computer, so it's not rendering stuff that it doesn't need. So the best thing to do here is to start from quite low and build up until you get better quality. But basically, I've put volumetric lighting in here, so I need some volume in here. So I played with this number. I tried to go it down lower, but essentially, the lower these numbers, the better. Essentially, but obviously, you compromise on quality. So I'm just trying to think of change anything in here now. The environment, I've put the atmospheric volume lighting on here. So to get this, if you press this button, let's go to Control A. Basically, you put a volumetric lighting on it by pressing this button and going and selecting volume, but essentially that gives you the nice atmospheric effects that we've got. I've not put things like motion blur because that's going to really slow your render time down. You can do that in post-production if you want to, but you could try it, but it will increase your render times, etc., etc. So you can. This is where you minimise the amount of time that it takes, to actually render it out. Leave everything else sort of default as it. This is for like rendering out lots of different elements. Yeah, so that's pretty much what you need to do there. Set that up in that way. Once you've done that, you want to do some test renders. So if you open up Arnold, so go to the Arnold tab, and then go to a frame that. Let's have a look here. So something like this, and just hit play. So. Make sure bring this into screen and just turn it off and hit play again. Oh, sorry, it's opening off screen. So let me just take it smaller. Press stop. So essentially, if I press play, starts and kind of slowly builds up. You can see very quickly the kind of quality you get. Obviously, if you look at some of these sort of noise in this area here, it gradually gets rid of it, but basically you render it and you can see it's taking it's on 8%, so it's quite slow. Obviously this depends on the computer and how fast you're getting, but this is basically the kind of thing that's going to happen. You move the lights around to get what you want. I'm not going to go through this whole render, but essentially you can see the kind of speed that it's taking to do it. I think it's about 35 seconds per render, which when times in that by 280 or 258 frames, it can take you it can take overnight to render that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take in and show you how to get to this stage. So I'm going to basically pause it and go back to another scene. Okay, so what I've done is I've just basically deleted all the lights out of the scene. We've got the animation to the stage where we want them in perspective view. So we get this, when we first start off, what you want to do is we want to basically hit play. Now, there's no lights in the scene, so it's not going to show anything, and it's still taking a bit of time, but there's nothing there to see. So the first thing you want to do is to kind of basically see everything. So what I would recommend you doing is coming in here and creating a sky dome. What this does is it creates a basic light in Maya, essentially. If I press play, you can see that's a pretty drastic render of it, but it gives you an idea of what the model looks like. Okay, if I just delete that, that's a first step that you can actually test render things really. What I like to do is I like to sort of build up very gradually what I'm doing. So I'm going to start off by, personally I like perspective lights. So if I create myself a spotlight essentially. So I've created a spotlight and I'm going to go render panel look through selected, right? And I'm going to use this to come in and get my light in a kind of area that I'm happy with. So if I press Control A, it brings up the attribute editor to the light. If I come back into my camera view here, so what I want is I want a dual view. I want a camera and I want a perspective. Okay, so I can move around in here and I can then render it in here. If I come into my camera view, like so, I'm going to press 7, which you can see it turns the lights on, but it's not a very good quality render of it, but that doesn't matter at the moment. You can come in and render this as an Arnold view, a renderer Arnold, which will show you the actual render. You can see there. Right, so at the moment what we've got, so I just minimize this. I should just stop that and get this a bit smaller. Right, what you've got is something, this is the actual render view. Now the problem we've got here is that this light, just stop that a second, this is where your computer starts really slowing down. The problem we've got here is this light is essentially extremely, look through selected. Just going to move this and zoom a bit further out. There, I'm going to put that, something like that. The light needs to, in Arnold, you need to put the illumination up quite a bit. Okay, so we can test this. So it looks wrong here, but if we play this view, let's keep bringing the intensity further up. Let's go for 50, 55, and still nothing's happening. So let's go for 200. Now you can start to see we're starting to achieve something. So again, it depends on the scene. So let's go for 500. It's really slow. You can start to see a generalized render here. Let's go for 1,000. Just stop that for a second. 1,000. And then press play again. Yeah, you can start to see it developing. It's still pretty low. So I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to go for, that's actually 500, so let's go for 1,000, 1, 2, 3. There you go, so that should now, we should now start to get a better result. Yeah, you can start to see the volumetric, but also you can start to see the shadows being cast and stuff, and you can see in here it's starting to get to the right kind of level. I still needs to be a lot more than that, so let's go for 3. Yeah, much better. So you can see here, it's added quite a lot of stuff to the scenes. I reckon that's 2. So you can see I'm changing the numbers in the illumination here, and if I zoom in, you can start to see the volumetric effects, and that's much better. So we're starting to get a nicer edge to that. The problem we've got here is, you see how the edge here is very sharp. What we need to do is change this angle here. So if we take this off, we can soften the edge of the light, and then I take the cone angle down to the hot spot a bit smaller inside it, and you can start to see some nicer effects on the edge of the volumetric light. I also think that I need to take this up a little bit. That's much nicer, something like that. And let's take the cone angle a bit wider, something like that. zoom in to get that more volumetric effect. Oh, much too far. But you can start to see, actually, if I zoom in very slowly in here, you can start to see, just take it off screen, you can start to see how the volumetric effects are working quite nicely. Because we're doing like a fill light here, I'm going to just take this a bit further out. Okay, so that's reasonably nice. If I just pause that render for a second. Okay, right, so what we need to do, I need to put some, come back into my perspective view. I'm going to put some lights on the actual object and around this object, so I'm going to put them around first. So if I create myself an area light. Again, I'm not going to look through perspective. I want to move this off to the edge, like that. I'm going to move it down, I'm going to angle it up a little bit, and move it down. And this time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to group it to itself. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to test what it looks like. So we can see it viewing here. Let's have a look at it in the render. You can't see anything. Let me just do me a favour on this, making my life a little bit easier by selecting, actually, in this renderer, what I need. Okay, let me just turn that off a second. I don't like working within here. And what I prefer to do is open up an actual render view. Here we go. So this is better. You get a bit more information as well with the percentages and stuff. This button here, I want to basically grab my light in here. So this is the light. So if I just get this area where I want the light to affect, it's just going to render this a little bit. So if I come in and with the intensity, just whack the intensity up and start to see the result here. So if I just move this down a bit and then increase the intensity, let's go for 50. Bit too much, 30. So you can see I'm gradually working on this and I'm reasonably happy. Let's put a little bit of colour into it. So let me make it slightly, let's make it really subtle. So you can see here I'm doing it on the fly and I'm just gradually increasing this stuff. Because I'm only rendering a small section, it actually helps quite a bit. So if I just, again, the positioning's not quite right on that. I need the intensity to be a little bit more. There. Okay. And we can do various different things in there. Yeah, I'm not going to go into everything in too much detail because but essentially that's quite nice there. If we check off the main bit and take this off just to get an idea of what the whole thing looks like when start mixing together, I still think that needs a bit more intensity. Okay, so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to basically, with this light, so pause that for a second. With this light selected, I'm going to press Control G, which is grouping itself. And then I'm going to Control D, which is duplicate, and I'm going to press Shift, which will snap, not Shift, sorry, J, which will snap this, and then Control D, and then J. I want three versions of this light. So in the same kind of situation. Now, what's interesting here is this has gone too far off the side. So either the camera angle, that's why. So you can see the camera angle isn't quite right. Don't quite like the positioning of that when you're looking at it through the actual camera. So if I just come in here, and what I might do is just change the camera. So they're an equal distance, which I want to leave them because they would normally be. Just pause that for a second. So what I want to do is I want to basically move the camera over and just change it slightly, like that. Just so that these lights are a bit more evenly spread. Now what you could do, you could put these lights coming out from the side here and do all sorts of different stuff, but let's not get overly ambitious. Okay, so we've got these lights like that coming into it. Pause that again. What I also want to do is duplicate some of these lights and put them on the actual ship. So I've gone to a position in my animation where the ship is static on the pedestal. I'm going to give it some light. So again, if I come in and grab one of these, duplicate the actual light, Control D. Right, it's still taking quite a bit of time, so I think I might have left it rendering. Just close that down. No, it's not rendering. At the moment, it's working on, because I rotated it, it's working on the, I need to zero those rotations out. It's working on the local rotational axes of the light. What you can do is you can change that from object to world. So I double click on that, but it's up to you whether you do that or not. If I just minimize that. So I want to basically put this light, I want to put a light here, and a light on each individual element. So if I basically maximize my perspective view, move my light to a roughly the right position, press F, I want to snap this little dude into here. So I'm going to make myself a selection handle. Looks like I might have already done it. So if I just grab the light and that and press Control 1 to hide everything else, I want to have a selection handle. So let's just select this and come into my... It's not working for some reason. I'm not overly concerned. Let's see if we can snap it to it. So if I press V, I basically want to snap it. Let me turn on edges, so I can pretty much see what's going on. So that light, press F so I can zoom around it, is in the kind of right position. There we go. I just need to rotate the little fellow around. Press J. Let's snap it so it's 90 degrees, so that's pretty good. And don't forget it's a light, so we need to move it a little bit out. And I'm going to scale it down. Okay, so what we'll do is Control 1, come back into the main perspective render view, and let's have another look at this. And we can change, Control A will bring on the lights elements. So if I need to render this, so if I go into Arnold, press play. Let's see, so that's actually quite nice. Can you see how it's then, if I zoom into this, this is the light that I've just placed on it, and you can start to build up the complexity of it. If I just for convenience, just do a bit of this, and move this out of the way and can play with the settings a little bit more, just so I can get a rough idea. So it's press play on just the light area here. Let me change this colour to a slightly different colour. Oh, that's quite nice. You can get a sense of what's going on. Turn that down a bit. I quite like that. Okay, just take that down. Let me just get it away from the camera view for a second. So I'm just going to just move this and just so I can check out what's going on with the placement of the light. So I just want to basically move it out and see how it changes it. Move it in and out. So if we go below that, you can see it turns it off because it goes inside the mesh. But I want it to reflect on the underside of that. So I'm moving this backwards and forwards to get a rough idea of what's going on. I think I'm going to increase intensity quite a bit actually, because I want it to zoom out of the. There we go. Have this nice glowing effect. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So what I need to do is I need to parent this object to it. Press P so it moves with the ship. And then I'll just pause this. And I'm just going to duplicate this. Control D, move it across to in the right position here, and then parent that to that. Press P. Now I also want to put a light up here. So if I duplicate that and then snap it up, press F. Snap it to same, so you can see it's the same type of deal. I'm just going to move this in, across, and then rotate it around. Again, pressing J, get the angle right. Let's scale it down, and let me move it inside. Oh, it's going the wrong way. Oh, no, it's not going the right way. So there we go, something like that. I'll check that out in the render. Okay, so we need to turn that off. You can see it's coming up there as a, well, let's change the colour of that to blue. So you can see it's quite quick to start working with this, and you can see how very quickly it changes the atmosphere of the scene. Quite like that actually. So I'm going to leave that as it is. The intensity is quite nice. So if I just pause that and minimise it. So again, I'm going to parent my light to this object, press P, and I'm going to duplicate that. Whack it across to the other side. press F, make sure it's in the middle. So you can see it's quite a quick deal, and then press P to parent it to it. So I've got basically a couple of lights on the object, and basically you gradually build it up like so. I'm going to put something inside the cabin here, so I'm going to duplicate it again. Let's snap it up to be in the right kind of position, move it inside, press F, make sure it's pointing upwards, which it is. Now because we've got a transparent material on here, we need to make sure that it's slightly above this dome inside, because we want it to be able to see, want to better see it. Now we could use, actually, what I might do is use a different type of light here. Just delete that. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Let's just, okay, show non-show lights. I'm just going to delete that for a second. I'm going to create a different type of light. Let's call it point light. And put a point light inside it. There we go, something like that. Let's 50. Let's change the colour to be, let's go for green this time. Again, as per usual, let's check where it looks like to start off with. Oh, okay, I've made a mistake on the camera here. So, what I should have done now was really, let me just pause the render because that's why it's really slowing the machine down. So I've got camera view in here. You can see the camera view. What I should have done, when I was happy with the camera view, which was something along the lines of that, if I go to channel box and in the camera, if I right click, lock and key, lock selected, actually I won't lock and hide, I'll just lock selected. That means, oh, that's not right. Oh, it's a point light, sorry, my mistake. I need to select the camera. So, show, non-show camera. Okay, why can't we see the camera in here? That's weird. Show all, that's why. Show, non-show cameras. That's strange. Okay, show all. Which we have got a camera in the scene. It's here, look. Let me just go into the hypergraph hierarchy and let's check out where the camera is. Here we go, camera 1. Okay, if I lock, so on camera 1, it's camera 1 selected, lock selected. If I go back to the camera view, I can't move it. So that's what I should have done in the beginning, really. So yeah, okay. So we've got lights in here. Let's just do a check of the render. Yeah, so you can see we've got nice little illumination inside the cab. So you can see here you can gradually build up your lights here and keep checking it in a quite a nice way. And you do this until you're happy, essentially. I've set the render settings, so I'm going to quit that. Because I'm quite happy with that. So let's say we're ready to render it now. We've messed around with it, we've got the lights over looking at it. We've done the atmospheric effects basically in the renderer. Go into this. So basically I've deleted the atmospheric effects so I can show you. Basically you can create an atmospheric effect as simple as that by creating an atmospheric volume within the renderer. Just to kind of, so we've got the render settings set up, we've done the lights, ready to go. So basically what you do is you come into, make sure this is on rendering. What you need to do is go into renderer, and normally you can do batch render, but let's go for render sequence. Make sure it's on camera 1. Ignore most of it. Just put the camera 1 on it, essentially, and then you press render sequence. So I'm not going to do that because I've already done it, it'll overwrite stuff, but basically what it does is it takes the render settings, whatever you've called it in here, and whatever you know which frames you're rendering out. So what you can do is, if you're working on a place where they've got multiple computers, you can say render from frame to 1 to 50 on this computer, from 50 to 100 on this computer, etc., etc. Or you can send them off to a render farm. Depends on how your system is set up, but essentially, you know, you set off different renders essentially, and you know, if I close that, it takes the batch, not batch rendering, render sequence takes the information in the render settings and it implements them. So let's assume we've done that. It's going to take about 20 hours to do, well, 15 hours to do the render. So I'm just going to pause it. So when you've spent all this time, you end up with something like this, which is a series of single images, okay, which is great. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this into a render. So if we open up this thing called Adobe Media Encoder, if I just get file, actually, I'm going to just delete this, remove, yeah, I want to show you from scratch. So if we go File, Add Source, navigate to your first frame, make sure this TIFF sequence is selected. It will open up the TIFF sequence. You've got some choices here to do with compression. So what you can do is you can choose QuickTime, MPEG 4, MPEG 2. I'm going to put it on H.264, and I'll show you why. Because you can then select lots of different elements here. So you can see in here, you've got loads of different choices. If you're running it off for an iPhone, an Android tablet, Apple TV, whatever it is, I'm going to come down to 25 frames seconds and H1080p, which basically means it will render off at high quality HD quality, which is, you know, but again, you can change that. I'm actually rendering it out at a lower quality than that. So if you remember on my settings, I rendered it out at this is resolution, which is 540. So what I should really have done is change that to HD, to the 1920 1080, and then when I come into this, I can set that to be 1080. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to lose a bit of quality, but I'm not overly concerned. I'm going to show you the way that I would normally do it, but from convenience and time, I only rendered it at a smaller number, which I should have done it higher. Maybe I will do it at some point. So what we're going to do is, if I come into my media encoder, we've set the compression, and you can see by pressing this button the results, and you can change all sorts of things in here to make it smaller. It does a pretty good job at the moment. I wouldn't worry too much. You know, 'cause it's a pretty decent compression, but you can change lots of different things in here to, you know, 'cause at the moment there's no audio, which will make it smaller. If you're compressing it for web, you would probably choose one of the defaults for web, but you can change the settings to make it even smaller. So you can actually make something pretty decent quite small at this stage. But you can see here, yeah, if I go through it, it's actually fine. You don't need to worry too much about it. So the final thing to do is press play, and what will happen is it will render out as the image. And hey presto, we've pretty much finished. So as that renders that out, blah blah blah, job's a good one. It's quite quick once you've done the render. What we've got is essentially this. So if I go back in here, it's probably saved me another version of it. Yes, it has. So I've got this second version of it. So if I double click on this, and there we go. We have our new render. Actually, I've not rendered out, have I? Because I didn't press render, but that's the old render on the frames. But essentially, it's the same thing. So there we go. It comes up. It goes out of town, and that's it. So in recap, really, I've gone through a little bit about Arnold. I've gone through the lights, the render settings, a bit of sequence rendering and media encoding and compression. But essentially, this is where you combine everything together and make it into a final animation. You know, you can take it into programs such as After Effects or Nuke and do lots more playing around with it, add effects to it, add motion blur, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into all that detail. This is an introduction course, so that's enough for now, but that's definitely enough to get you a decent render out. The size of that render, let me just have a look at the information. View, let's go for details. So that is only 90 megabytes, which is completely acceptable size for that type of render. If I want to make it like, for web, I would have changed the media encoder settings to be web-based. Again, in here, if I come into this one here, yeah, I would check that rather than it be HD, I would take it down to smaller resolution, and I would also do the different elements, different size, and export for web. But that's enough now. So okay, that's great. Let's get on with it.